Welcome back to Collaboration Conversations. I'm your host, Regina Partain Bergman, CEO of Bridgeport Strategy. And once again, I am delighted to have a guest co host and panelist on our show today. So, my guest co host, I want to get right into this. I'm sure this is going to be a fabulous conversation today. So, I don't want to waste a lot of time on the front end. I want to get right in there. My guest co host is Mary Meduna-Gross, and Mary is an executive well being coach, an author, a speaker, a podcast host, and so much more. Welcome, Mary. So glad to have you on the show and be co-host today.
I love that. And if I could celebrate just for a moment.
Celebrations are awesome.
On the author side of things, I am now officially a #1 international bestseller.
Yay!
This week, our book, Stepping into Gratitude, was released. It was a compilation book, another collaboration that made the #1 list. So
awesome. And that is such a great feeling, isn't it? To have a #1, not only bestseller, but international bestseller. Yes.
It's mind-blowing and super exciting. So yes.
Very
thank you
good.
For the invitation to be here.
Awesome. Well, I am so glad you took me up on the invitation, and you brought a beautiful group of panelists for our discussion today. So, Mary, would you tell us a little bit about your journey, who you serve, and why that's important to you?
Absolutely. So I am an executive well-being coach, and I got to this point through leadership. So my expertise is in leadership. I really wanted to be that leader that created the space for everyone else to really grow and expand. And I burned out from that, physically, mentally, and spiritually. And I really had to bring myself back from that brink. And I remember after I was in the public education system, and my superintendent called me in one day and he says, "Look, Mary, you're doing all the right things. If I were in your shoe, I'd be doing exactly what you're doing, but what you're doing isn't working. So you have to figure this out or you have to go."
Oh, wow.
And so when I went back to my office after that, and of course I'm in the midst of this burnout at this point, right? And I'm like, okay, what do I do with this? And the first thing I'm surprised, but the first thing I asked myself is, okay, Mary, how have you been contributing to what is happening in this organization right now? Because up until that point, I was hired to come in and fix things, right? And so what I realized in that moment was, oh my gosh, no wonder this, I'm doing the right things, but it's not being accepted. The team members aren't really coming on to this. And I can now, all of a sudden, I can see, well, of course they're not. I'm seeing myself as the fixer, and I'm seeing them as broken.
Oh, yes.
Of course, that's going to, bleed through every action that I do. And so that's what people are reacting to, is that energy, not what I'm doing. And I think that actually created some confusion, because in their logical mind, they could say, well, this is what we should be doing, and this is the right thing. And yet there was that energetic, that unconscious piece of, this doesn't feel safe to me.
Right.
And I would hear people feedback saying, well, Mary's really intimidating. And that would just blow me away. That is the last word that I would ever have used to define myself. But even in that moment, I could say, oh my gosh. And the next words that came out of my mouth were, I wish I had a coach. And this is probably about 13 years ago. Coaching wasn't what it is now. And I thought, what is that? So I was like a little download from the universe that, coaching is a thing. And I had always wanted, and I always imagined myself doing a business outside of my profession, more as a consultant again, right? Consultancy was familiar, right, not coaching. And so that started me on my journey. And so over these past 12 years, not only have I been learning the coaching side of things, but I've been going through my own personal transformation. And I have come to understand and believe that entrepreneurship is the greatest personal transformational journey that you will ever take. There is no place to hide in this world, in the entrepreneurial world. Every limiting belief that we hold about ourselves is going to show up in our business. And we either try to work through it, work around it, or whatever, or we can just learn to dissolve it, replace it with something else that's more empowering, and grow from there. So that's kind of my story in a nutshell. So I now serve those exhausted and frustrated CEOs and founders and leaders who feel like I've been doing everything right. Like I've been literally, I don't know what else I could do more right than what I'm doing. And yet I'm not getting the results I want. And so I help them both with physical wellness, with mental health wellness, nervous system wellness, and then of course the coaching to kind of pull it all together and really get to that meaningful, the alignment of our purpose and our actions.
I love it. That is amazing, Mary.
Yeah.
That's wow. What a gift to be able to bring to people. And what a gift for you, for that superintendent to have given you that message.
Yes.
Because look how many lives you've changed since then.
Absolutely. My own included, right?
Your own included.
I'm at the top of that list because when I look back and who I was then, I was really unhappy.
Right. And then when you work with the clients at the level that you work with, those CEOs and those leaders, and then they have that opportunity to make a huge impact in other people's lives, not only their own, but other people's lives.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. So
and then we have the ripple effect, right?
The best. Absolutely the best.
The best thing, that big part of that ripple effect.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mary, would you introduce each of our guest panelists and have them share a bit about their journey, who they serve and why, please?
Absolutely. I'm going to start with Unitzia. Unitzia, thank you again for saying yes to this. Unitzia and I met maybe about a year ago already, and we did some collaboration. I have a magazine called the Entrepreneur Magazine, and Unitzia created content for that. She was a contributor, and she's one of those individuals. She's not somebody that we interact with often, and yet when we do, it's always one of those really powerful experiences. So again, thank you for saying yes, and I would love to hear a little bit about your story.
Thank you so much for the invitation, Mary. It's always such a pleasure connecting with you, whichever the topic of conversation may be. And congratulations on that new book release. I did see it on social media, and I was so excited. And especially when it's one of the collaboration projects, those are harder to get to actually rank like that. So well done.
Thank you.
It is a pleasure to be here, and especially to talk about the very important topic of collaboration. Everything that we do actually breaks down to that notion of collaboration. And for me, this journey started very similarly to yours, as well as so many other business owners and entrepreneurs, when my husband and I realized that we had a major problem when it came to how we were building wealth. Now, let me just preface by saying I've always been in the world of finance. I'm a finance graduate. I've graduated with a finance degree. I did strategy consulting for a lot of the world's Fortune 500 companies or the big organizations. And it was always focused on the finance operating model, the office of the CFO. And what we realized years later as a high income earning family was that our finances were not where they should be. We were not investing the way that was aligned to who we were as individuals. The guidance that we were getting from our financial advisors at that point in time was one where it was very much aligned to services that they were selling. Mm-hmm. And so I went to my husband and I said, one day, listen, we've got these financial products coming up for renewal. How do we go about this? Because it doesn't feel right. And so we scoured the market, found some consultants that were willing to take the plethora of questions that I always have. Because my philosophy is if we don't ask questions, we're going to end up somewhere on the sideline. And so kept asking questions, getting no answers, getting the runaround. I said, that's enough. Like, we can't do this. And so these guys and gals basically sat down and said, okay, here's how we need to look at things. And at that point in time, what I realized was that as individuals, my husband was a business owner at the time. So as a business owner family, we had a lot of blind spots. And so my mission at that time became to say, okay, I already deal with the blind spots and addressing those for the Fortune 500 companies. How do we do that in the context of the individual? When it comes to our own personal finances, when it comes to, how we deal with growing, protecting wealth, thinking about our legacy. And it was at that point in time that I said, you know what, we need to have a methodology that will help us look at where are those blind spots. So we started geeking out on that. And then what I realized was starting to work with individuals and some of the small business owners, a lot of the CFOs that you're talking to, was this notion that they were feeling that they were somewhere in between worlds. Again, they felt that they were in a situation where they had a plethora of financial products and financial things, but they liked real estate. They wanted to be in alternative investments. They wanted to start thinking and talking more about the taxes that they were paying. And it seemed like nobody was really talking that end-to-end game. And even if they were talking, they had no way of actually implementing those solutions. And so being a good strategy consultant that I was, having built my career on that, I said, okay, we have an opportunity to bring those together so that clients no longer leave money on the table. So we started on the financial side. We then continued to grow towards this idea of how do we minimize taxes in the present, and have built a methodology around that as well. And then we also found out that individuals have huge needs when it comes to how do we actually build our legacy. So what it boils down to is think of us as the fractional family office, or the heavy 6-figure 7+ business owners and businesses where they don't quite qualify to work with a family office because they don't have the 50, 100, $200 million in net worth, but they also want more than just everything else that they can get, kind of by going and knocking on different doors. How do we get it all under the same roof? Because what happens when we do that, we stop a ton of financial leakage across a ton of different areas where that leakage actually happens. So that's a little bit about my journey and the joy that I get to have and live on a daily basis when I interact with my clients.
I love that. One of the things I love about that story is your own initiative to pull that together, right? You just didn't look for somebody else's solution to the problem. You were willing to go out there and create the solution. Again, not necessarily on your own.
That solution, unfortunately, Mary, I wish that we could have done that. It's just not there. To this point, clients come to us and they'll say, I just spent a ton of money with this company promising me all of these tax savings. I just spent a ton of money with this financial planner or advisor. I just spent all of this money with an attorney. Nobody's talking. I don't know which way is up.
Right.
So unfortunately, it's something that is so complex. And it also, it's driven, the need is driven by a system that does not incentivize that collaboration. And it's funny that we're talking about collaboration because that collaboration is actually not incentivized across the industry. We're dealing with different industries. We're different with the accounting industry. We're dealing with the financial advisory industry. And we're dealing in some cases even with the legal side of things.
Sure.
And so that's where I'm the biggest believer in collaboration, because when we do that, the individuals actually get a chance to benefit tremendously from having it on their side.
Oh, that's amazing. Again, to know that the people that you're working with, especially those that you're working with to manage your money, are collaborating with one another. One other guest that was sick and couldn't be here today is my CPA. And I work with him and a bookkeeper, and the two of them collaborate. And we were talking yesterday about, I consider myself to be nearly illiterate when it comes to money and those kinds of things. And so, we were just saying how nice it is that I've got a bookkeeper and my CPA talking with one another, because they can talk their money language and solve the problems. And I know that it's in good hands. And so I really love hearing, I just see the value in that kind of collaboration for the client. I'm receiving it.
Absolutely. Now, the only thing that we need to add on, if you were to think about it, it's amazing that the two of them are talking. How powerful would it be if the broader wealth building efforts, where we're talking about not just investments, but the different ways that money is working for you to come under the mix. And then, how do we think about the exit planning? How do we think about the legacy planning? All of those, when you bring all of those together and all of the individuals, your true entire financial team is at the table. Now it just makes the accounting team job so much easier, but also that much more rewarding, because they know that they can continue to add value in ways that are even more meaningful than if it's just, the two parties talking. But you're luckier than most to have the two of them talking. So seriously blessed.
Yes, and I know that I can build, right? So this is my commitment to myself this year, is that I was going to get my finances in order for my life and my business. And so this is my first step towards that. And I really do appreciate the next step about adding that wealth advisor in there as well.
So true.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love this. This is phenomenal.
Yeah. Isn't it? It's so much fun. Well, thank you again for being here. Is there anything else before I move on to Sylvia?
No, we can go ahead and get
Okay.
Sylvia. I can't wait to hear what
Yes.
what value she adds into the world.
Absolutely. Well, I just want to kind of introduce Sylvia a little bit here. Sylvia and I are new to one another. I started my business just before COVID, and so all of my networking was being done virtually. And this summer, I had my first in-person business experience since COVID. And when I'm sitting in the room with these people having the conversations that I want to be having, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I live in Chicago and I don't have these connections outside my door. And so I've made a concerted effort to look for and connect with other business providers in Chicago, businesses and business providers in Chicago, so that we can start a local kind of networking and collaboration. And so Sylvia and I we had an appointment last Friday to talk about some collaborations that we might want to, dream up together. We had to shift that till next week. But so Sylvia, thank you again for saying yes to this invitation. I know we're at the beginning of our partnership here. Sylvia is a sales coach. And in our first conversation, we really got to talking about some of these things that you heard in my speech about CEOs just getting stuck. And I can imagine that if I'm trying to teach, I know when I'm stuck and I'm not aligned with myself, it doesn't matter what my coaches are telling me to do. I'm not getting it. Mm-hmm. I'm not getting it, or I'm not doing it. Mm-hmm. And so that's where Sylvia and I were like, maybe we can pull something together on this so that, we can compound our impacts on our clients. Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to that. But today, Sylvia, thank you again for being here. And I would love to hear your story.
Thank you. I'll keep it really brief. I want to get into the meat of the conversation about collaboration. So just 3 things I want to mention. One is, yes, I am a sales coach. I founded this business called Brain Cells Global to help organizations figure out how to use science-backed research and data to drive not only sales effectiveness, but also to engage their end buyers, their prospective clients, their current clients much more richly. So what we claim to and are excited to continue to affect in organizations is this notion that we want to help anybody within the organization, especially those in client-facing roles, to leave the other side with more, better, or different insights and ideas and practices that could help them, the client side, do better, achieve their goals, and achieve their aspirations and dreams. And so we're really about studying and bringing to bear these very pragmatic, research-backed notions about how do you drive interactions with others, be it in a commercial success environment, be it for relationship building. How do we generate more trust? Mm-hmm. How do we generate more of that reciprocity? How do we truly build a two-way street with somebody else? We like to talk about this notion of how do we lead with a human-centric lens. Yeah. Again, not just in sales, but in everything that we do, even in something as seemingly innocuous as feedback, right? A lot of times we over-index on getting the point across and forgetting that there's a human across the table. That is the sum of the areas that we at Brain Cells Global love to affect. And all of this came about because I am a third culture kid. I study from a young age, how do we interact with people who are from different backgrounds, different than ours, perhaps, or different from each other's? How do we translate concepts to other people who just have a different worldview than ours? How do we cross borders and languages cognitively and emotionally? How do we forge those connections even when seemingly there's nothing in common? So those are things that I'm excited to dive into in the context of collaboration building.
I love that. I do have a question for you, though, before we dive into that collaboration piece. What is it about the service that you provide your clients that just gives you that rush of satisfaction?
Yeah,
Great question.
Great question, Mary. There are a lot of things that I can answer with, yet it just happens. So this is, a little bit of recency bias at play, but I'm going to share it anyway. It's that light bulb moment. Someone going, oh my gosh, I get it now. So it's really generative in that not only do they see like, hey, there's a way forward, but I see myself being part of that transformation.
Yeah.
So that transformation, that aha moment, that leap is what drives me to get up every single day and do this day in and day out.
They're priceless, aren't they? Those moments. They're absolutely
100%.
priceless.
100%.
Yeah.
Gosh, that is one. I got the chills when you said that. I can feel it.
Thank you for that.
I have a client that I've teased because her light bulb moments are just so, I mean, you just look at her and you just see it. You know what I said? I think that was seen by the space satellites,
Yeah. The lights literally flicker, right? And it could be seen from space.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah. That is exactly the description, Regina. Right, of that aha moment that I am so eager to affect, and so is my team of consultants. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
That's what we love unpacking.
So cool.
Mary, stupendous job of choosing panelists today. Awesome. I am so excited for this conversation. So I'm going to ask a really crazy question here. What would your business be without collaboration? Would it exist?
I'll share. I'll jump in.
Please.
So I'll jump in at the micro level. So I've been giving a lot of thought to the journey that my business has undertaken over the last 5.5, 6 years. And one of the things that I noticed was I could have done it on my own, not to sound arrogant, yet it is so much better. It is so much more impactful. We are leaving such a bigger, more meaningful footprint everywhere we go because of this team of collaborators that I am privileged to call my friends, my thought partners, my go-to people who have my back, whose back I have. So I will say, as a founder myself, the inception of the business, the ideas behind Brain Cells were born out of my own thinking. However, for it to reach a level that it has, I know I couldn't have done it on my own.
Yeah.
I would say the same thing is true for us in terms of how our business is structured. Same thing, similar to your story, Sylvia. It's grown over the years. And what we found was that even looking at where we're at today, if we didn't have not only the collaboration, but the reciprocity with our strategic partners, the same partners that are helping us bring the strategies that, frankly, if it wasn't for this collaboration, they would never have access to. Yeah. And they wouldn't have access to, because these are not things that, for us at least, anyone can just go and find them on Google. And so oftentimes when clients will ask us, well, how in the world are you able to make that happen? Well, it's because we invest in those collaborations. And I will tell you, just last night, I was meeting with a client over dinner, and he was telling us that, funny enough, one of the partnerships, one of the strategic partners that we're connected, that we work closely with, he said, this is how much the relationship with our clients, how important that is to us, and how much we invest in it. He said, hey, by the way, just so that you know, such and such company, I know you guys do a lot of business with. By the way, they reached to me behind your back. They know that they should normally CC you or the team on any and all communication, but here's how they reached to us. He said, now the problem that I have is, number one, they are not respectant of you when you are so respectful of that collaboration to where you are always bringing them in the appropriate conversations. Number one. Number two, even more important, he said, listen, if I do what they're incentivizing me to do through those emails, it's going to completely throw off my tax game.
Mm.
True. And so because like our clients know that that collaboration that we've built is so important, the moment they see that somebody's walking out of line, what do you think they do? They come right back to us. And so for us, it's been, the way that we've built our collaborations has been so much so built on trust that when that trust is broken, guess what happens? The next question we ask is, why did that happen? And if this was continued to happen, how does it, and does it put our clients in jeopardy? Because if the answer is even minutely yes, do we think that those collaborations are going to continue to prosper going forward? Probably not. So while for us, it's important to continue to build those relationships, the moment we see that there's any sort of weirdness going on, if it has even the smallest chance of impacting our clients or their bottom line, we're very quickly to say, listen, we're respectful, but we expect the same in return. And that's one thing that I'm finding, and I'd love to hear you ladies' perspective on this, is how do you handle situations where that collaboration is not reciprocated and it could in turn impact negatively on some side, either your business and or your clients? Because that's like, we hold that very close for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ooh, that is a big question. Let's put a pin in that. I do want to come back to that.
Yep.
The first word that came up for me, Regina, when you asked that question, what would your business be like if you weren't collaborating?
Yeah.
The first word that popped in my head was it would be lonely.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
And then the different collaborative projects that I've been engaged in over the last 3 or 4 years come to mind. And I'm thinking of one in particular where with a partner, I'm coaching a team out in Oregon. And she's on the ground, she's local, and I'm in Chicago. So obviously I'm virtual. And that has been such a fabulous combination, not only of the local and the virtual, but of our areas of expertise. And so she's really powerful in the group collaborations, right? Conversations. How do we have really difficult conversations, powerful conversations that are meaningful and relevant, not just complaining? And my areas of expertise is in that individual, that self-leadership. And so we've been doing this combination, and we had an opportunity a couple of weeks ago to do their fall gathering. And so it was really, I was now on site and present, and to see all of that come together was just, it blows my mind. It blows my mind every single time, you know, we have these conversations about, and I think someone else mentioned it too, the two efforts together compound. It's not just where 1 and 2 make 3, and 1 and 1 make 2. It's 1 and 1 make 5.
Or in my language, 1 + 1 = 11.
There you go. There you go. I like that now. Yes, yeah. So that's really my driver around collaboration, is that we're better together.
Yeah.
And that means our impact is greater together. And so that's why collaboration is such a high value for me.
I'd like to add a quote here. This is probably used, multiple times a day at certain companies. Yet the notion of, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I think that nicely summarizes what has been shared so far this morning, in that, sometimes it is worth that effort to slow down and come together so that we do ensure longevity, that we reach our destination in the smartest way. So I really have appreciated everything that's been shared so far.
Awesome. I'd love to make a comment about what you said there, Mary, in terms of it being lonely. Do you also not find that it negatively impacts your energy?
To be working
to be working alone.
Right?
And I mean, because when you're involved in those collaborations, what happens to your energy levels? I know mine are through the roof, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Totally through the roof. Yeah. And so, that's when they can see me from the satellite. My light is shining. So, but going back to your question, Eunicia, if we can pull that pin out of that, you know, it really becomes really important how we qualify those partners, doesn't it?
Yes.
And so I'd love for you guys ladies to talk about that a little bit. I've had to terminate a couple of I've had to fire a client, was actually a banking client when I had my staffing firm. And there was nothing we could do to please this person. And she was so hard on all of my staff members. And I finally just said, I'm sorry, but this is not working. We obviously are not meeting your expectations. Let me introduce you to somebody else that might be able to serve you better. And my staff were just like, oh, thank you. Yeah. But I've also had to terminate a collaboration because exactly what you were talking about, that negative impact on others, on other partners, other clients, and it's not a place you come to lightly. I think. Would you agree with that, Eunicia? I mean, yes, it's a decision you easily make in terms of this is hurting people. I'm not going to do this, but it also there's some thought and time that goes into that. So
for us, and this is where I'd love to hear what you ladies are doing in this arena, or how you're thinking about it. Because for us, I see the collaboration into two parts. To oversimplify it, part number one, very important for us, is the collaborations that are taking to enable everything that we set out to do and to help the client with, which is kind of bringing that fractional family office. It's not something that's just available out there, unfortunately. And so because of that, it's very, very important, those strategic partners that we collaborate with, those are people that we rely on. We talk when we need to. Sometimes it's a quick call, sometimes it's a longer session, but it's focused on delivering hardcore value. The other part of collaboration that I see is, and fun collaboration, similarly to what we're doing here, as well as we're, building events together, doing conferences. We've done all of that. And those are with individuals where it may not necessarily impact the client, but it's still, to your point, Regina, from earlier, we have to be able to qualify and make sure that we are on the same page, not just because it's lip service, but when one party is pulling, both parties pull ahead, so that 1 + 1 actually makes up 11, or is it more of a, hey, I want to hitch my wagon to this, or my horse to this wagon kind of a thing, because there's going to be benefits in it for me or for the other parties. We've had that happen before, and it's just a matter of figuring out when that happens. We're not wanting to sever the relationships, perhaps as friends, but realizing where we can go together as collaborators versus friends is very different, so that we can maintain the friendships and not let those relationships sour.
I'd love to jump in here and share a best practice that my team and I use. So one of the things that we deeply focus on is articulating the spoken expectations about what this collaboration needs to look like. So even defining from both sides, what do we mean by collaboration? So that word sounds very straightforward, yet what we've come to find out is a lot of people have different ideas and ideals about collaborating, right? So even just explicitly stating what we mean by collaboration, like these are the hallmarks of a collaborative partnership or relationship. How does it sound to you on the other side? And have them share out when we say collaborate, what we mean is really this or that. And also one of the other areas that we deeply focus on, certainly in client relationships and engagements, but even with each other, is to go, what are the shared goals here? What is that common outcome that we're both agreeing to? And that a lot of times does surface those things that are gray in color, right? And it's a great way to catch any false assumptions that one side might be making of the other, instead of going, hey, let's shake on this and then go forth and then 10 hours later going, that is not what
have I done?
That's not it, right? And so it's really focusing on explicitly articulating and communicating to the other side and vice versa. What are those expectations?
Yep.
about
Yeah.
that
Okay.
partnership, the collaboration, the relationship, and then stating, are these, or even confirming, are these the right
Yeah.
shared goals and outcomes that we are both committed to give and get, right? So
Yeah. Right.
it's a two-way street again that we're really focused on. And I'll throw in a third bullet point here. One of the things that I've come to learn is that knowing thyself, knowing ourselves about how we like to work. So I really
Yeah.
love that the word energy, Regina, that you mentioned a moment ago. There are just things that bring me energy that
Yeah.
do not bring energy to other people, and vice versa. And
Right.
so for me to stay in integrity of that has been paramount, right? So for me, there are just some things that I will never be motivated to do.
Yeah. Right.
Even if I had the intellectual capability to do it, I would just never do it, right? So knowing that helps me formulate those articulations of what I could give, and what I could give to the relationship.
But also
Yeah.
the energy. I love that you mentioned that, Sylvia, because that energy, like for me, it's almost like an innate thing. It's not even a check the box.
Yes.
It's there.
Yes.
I don't feel that's probably one of the first things that where, if I talk to someone, if that energy isn't there, there probably would not be a next call. So I
Yeah,
really appreciate
right.
you mentioning it. But you also said something about the shared goals and common outcome, and it's spot on for individuals that are listening and have struggled. We've worked through a lot of the kinks just because we wanted to get to a place where that energy was always in its integrity.
Yeah.
But when you mentioned the shared goals and common outcomes, what I think it's brilliant and it's key. It was at that point in time where we implemented, once we started implementing, discussing the shared goals and the outcomes. And oh, by the way, that's probably, I'm sure you would agree, the hardest part to do in any relationship. It was at that point in time that you could just see people shaking out. It was kind of like they either stay or they don't. And it's so beautiful because then it gives them the freedom to move on, and it doesn't,
Exactly.
create this weird sense of, I think we're going to be able to make it work, only to find out that it's not real.
Yeah.
Right.
Precisely that. And it does honor the other side's need for choice, right?
Yes.
So let's just talk about this. Let's just put it out there. And they might go, you know what, Unicia, I love what you're doing, yet this is not it for us.
Yep.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's okay, right? Or vice versa. You could say the
Vice
same. They go,
versa. Yep.
love what you're doing. I love what you're aiming for, yet that's not really in integrity with who we're trying to be or what we're about. And just ways to select, right? Whether do we want to stay committed? Do we
Right.
do we want to go forth with this relationship even? And if
Yeah.
so, what are those pitfalls that we might need to overcome together? So now
Yeah.
it becomes more of a roadmap to go, hey, we do align in goals and share outcomes and all those wonderful things. Yet the reality is there are going to be some bumps along the way. Yet the commitment is to stay focused on
Yeah.
that North Star, right? That we're going to aim in the same direction. We're going to commit to, each other in this walk, and we're going to commit to solving those issues. And so I really love that you talked about energy. Yeah, absolutely. Like sometimes we just know, yet we force ourselves, we rationalize red flags away. We rationalize and try to, literally talk ourselves into doing something that we know is not going to lead to a good point.
Exactly. And the beautiful thing is that once you have everything aligned, right? Let's say that all 3 points are aligned. What we've seen is that when they're in alignment, those hard conversations that you just mentioned, though, that for people to actually be able to have, my philosophy, for people to be able to have a hard conversation and move on the other side and still be collaborators or whatever the category they fall in, it's so beautiful. But it cannot happen, even if those, first and foremost, everything that you mentioned has to be there. And if all of those criteria are being met, then when the tough conversation shows up, which it will, it just always does, then we can move on to say, okay, we're in alignment on everything else. Let's figure out how do we move to the next level. And it's just, it becomes a joy to actually solve that problem versus I want to run away because we've got a problem to fix.
I love that framing.
Yeah.
I love this. You've articulated everything that I was thinking about too. So I'll just give an example. I remember, because I've gotten into partnerships where we weren't that clear about things, right? We just kind of jumped in and did things. And sometimes it works out well. And sometimes we hit a rough road or a rough patch. But I remember one partnership in particular that we were very clear at the beginning, and somehow we both knew that, you know, when we get to that point, we've got our agreements. That's who we are in that moment. 6 months from now, one or both of us may have changed enough that is no longer in alignment with who we are. And so this one partnership that I had, we said, you know what, we're going to have regular check-ins. And we're just going to say, do I still feel energy around this? And is this still in alignment with who I am? And as soon as that one or the other says, no, this doesn't feel right, we can see, is there anything we can do to tweak to get it back into alignment? Or is this just the end of this particular collaboration, and being willing to let things end, because when we end, new things get to start. And I've always been afraid of that part, right? Of, oh my God, I've made a commitment to somebody and now I don't like what I'm doing anymore. And how do I tell them that I really want out of this? Because if I don't do that, then I'm just not showing up anymore, right? Now I'm violating my own agreement that I made with them. Right. Whereas in the beginning, when this is all laid out, that one or both of us might change, and that's okay. We'll adjust as we go. So I'm not married.
I really like that.
Right?
I really like that.
I think it goes back to the energy. If we're in tune with that energy, it's funny that you mentioned this, Mary, because it was very recent. I was talking to a brand new strategic partner for us, someone that's actually here locally, and that doesn't happen very often. We have partners all over the United States because of our model. But this individual and this company, very successful company here in the local market. And one of the things that the owner said at the very first meeting is, listen, they actually have a process to where they meet with the people that they know, like, and trust on a regular basis. And I thought, oh my God, just when I thought I learned it all. And it's funny that you just mentioned it, because if we're intentional, to do that, to implement that for ourselves, it just will continue to help surface that we're either in alignment or we're not. And it's okay if we're not.
Well, and it's okay.
But then it also relieves that energy. And like you said, if when one door closes, another one will open, and we mustn't be afraid. But oftentimes as business owners, for the fear of it not being lonely, maybe we make the wrong decisions. So yeah, I love the way you articulated that.
Absolutely. I want to throw one other word out there, as we've talked about goals and, you know, being in alignment on so many things. What about values? Mm-hmm. How important is it to be aligned in your values when you're creating collaborations?
Let someone else go first, because I'm happy to talk about value.
Jump in there. I can feel it from you.
I'm happy to jump in here, Regina.
Okay.
I really do love that you raised this issue, or not even an issue, a topic of conversation. So I think of values as, again, guiding principles for how we need to behave, how we need to interact with people. Yet it's the expression and the living embodiment of the values that I think are even more crucial for relationships to flourish. So it's really it's more than just, you know, you stating what you're about. Is how are you living those things?
How do you show up?
How do you show up, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, again, on paper, both sides might be perfect 10s in their respective values, yet there are just some scenarios in which those things don't gel when they are applied in real life situations, right? There are just things that don't bring the two sides together to form those connective tissues that are required for those things that Eunicia had mentioned earlier, right? The trust, the reciprocity, which you know, reflects much of what we also focus on. All this to say, Regina, so I'm very sensitive to how someone not just talks about their values, but can I see them?
Are they walking the walk?
Are they walking the walk? Right? Yeah. Are they literally walking the talk even, right?
Yeah, walking the talk.
But are you even walking the talk?
Right.
So that's what I look for. And I also think that values serve as the you know, framing of the sandbox that we know we can be, you know, performing at our best in. Yeah. So one of the things that I think about is, you know, this is as much of a guiding principle of two sides coming together as much as it is for me to abide by or to align to
Right.
in order to show up in the best way that I can.
Make sure you're walking that talk.
100%. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So if I'm about human centric, right? Even just now, like before this call, one of my partners, she's telling me I'm not feeling so hot. I'm gonna get this to you tomorrow. And my first reaction is like, can you do a little bit more? that's not human centric, right? So I had to go, wait a minute. My values, if my values are such that they are about putting the human first, I should have led with, how can I support you? What can I do to ease the burden? Or right, how are you?
Right.
Even so, that's how I like to think about the value systems that we all probably hold dear to. But more importantly, how am I walking that talk is what I focus on.
Sylvia, if I could just respond to that real quickly. I catch myself when I'm writing to somebody doing what you wanted to do verbally. So I start that email out and I'm just right to the point, boom, 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 and I'm like, wait a minute, step back. How are you doing today? Or whatever. Come back. Let's put a little humanness in the front of this. Now let's get into the meat of what we need to talk about. But we get that drive and we're just, let's get this done.
Yeah.
Like, okay, stop.
Yeah. And so, a lot of us are very focused in the outcomes, right? That's why we're great at what we do. Yet, like I've been saying all along, which I so appreciate all of you leaning into this subject matter of, there is a human on the other side.
There is,
and the recognition of that, right? To go like, there is a living, breathing soul who is receiving our communications, who is receiving our energies, who's receiving our ideas and thoughts, right? So how do we make this truly, a two-way street, mutual, so that they're not just absorbing all the things from our side and we're not taking any back, right? So
one of the things that I love, Brendan Burchard talks a lot about this, is when you're dealing with, we're all dealing with situations like that, and we have to put a pause, especially for us type A ladies out here. It's when we're dealing with a situation like that comes across our desk or our phone or our text message, it's almost asking the question of asking ourselves, or maybe just making the statement of, this is like, I don't know what they're dealing with, whether it be because they're not feeling well, or because maybe the way they come across is harsher. And I literally had to have this discussion with my daughter recently. She's almost 16, and she said something, one of her friends said something, and it was kind of inconsiderate to somebody else. And she said, Mom, but I just don't understand it. We're a group of really close friends. And I said, here's what I know. What I know is that you don't have, none of you guys in this friendship group actually has visibility into what this person's dealing with. So I don't think that it came from a place of ill intent, but maybe they're dealing with something that you don't see. And she came back the next day, she said, Mom, you were so right. And so just giving ourselves that permission to respect whatever they're dealing with and know that it's not towards us makes it even feel a little less than we're alone in this world of business ownership. And it makes it a lot more enjoyable. But going to values, one of the things that you said, Sylvia, that resonates very strongly for me is them walking the walk, and the based on the talk that they have out there. Because at the end of the day, I can respect somebody else's values, even if they're different than mine. But if something comes out of their mouth and they say, here are my values, and I see that they're not in alignment to those same things that they've stated, automatically that tells me that me respecting their values is not enough, because they're not respecting the same values for themselves. So that's that's huge for me.
Spot on. That's huge.
That is big. Wow, ladies, we've used up most of our hour. This has been great. You have all added such depth to the conversation. I truly, truly appreciate it, and look forward to collaborating with each of you.
Absolutely.
Likewise.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, Regina. This is really nice. And I think that, this whole conversation around collaboration is really important, because especially in business, because I think at least my first experience in coaching was in an organization that was very productivity driven, right? And it was all about competition and domination and collaboration, there was no room for it at all. In fact, it was kind of seen as a weakness. And I believe that the leaders and the businesses that we need now are these that can come together. Because again, that idea, we get to compound one another's effect rather than just being our own little pockets of genius.
Right.
We get to combine that. So I really want to continue to advocate for collaboration and break down these beliefs that we have about competition. And I often, in fact, I have a networking group that I'm starting here in Chicago, and I invited a person who does a lot of the same kind of work that I do. And he's like, well, we're in the same field. And so I don't think that there'd be room for me. And I said, come to the freaking meeting. Because who knows if we really are doing exactly the same thing. But again, maybe you're doing something slightly different than I am. And we might actually be really good referral partners for one another. So again, thank you for having these conversations, for promoting this idea about collaboration and the value that it brings.
Yeah, I never walk away from conversations with coaches, even though I'm a coach, because you never know. I mean, that way that you serve that audience could be just different enough that you can complement one another. Awesome.
So true. So true. I see it working all the time, by the way. So
absolutely.
I love studying sports for that very reason. I love studying athletes, top performing athletes. I go, tennis is my chosen sport, even though I love most sports. And I just think about how, these rivalries that people talk about of the big three currently, back in the day, Andre versus Pete, I go that kind of, and I use the word rivalry carefully here to go, hey, for them, they always talk about, I am in competition with myself.
That's right.
I can still learn from others. Every time, these athletes see other athletes, they take something away. And that curiosity, I think, is what truly sets them apart. And the devotion to the craft is what sets them apart to be the greatest of the greats, So really love what you're saying here, Mary, in terms of, don't look at other people as a source of competition, but as a source of new ideas, inspiration, right?
Absolutely.
Different, better know-hows or other know-hows.
Yeah. Fantastic. Oh, we could go on and on, ladies, but unfortunately we're out of time. Mary, would you lead our wrap-up round for us, where you have everyone share their final thoughts on collaboration and their contact information?
Absolutely.
And I will put everybody's contact info into the comments so that everyone can see those.
Absolutely. Okay. Sylvia, let's start with you. What are your wrap-up thoughts and your contacts?
Wrap-up thoughts from my end are really think about how you want to affect the interaction. So I go back to the quote of, most people don't remember what we say, but they certainly remember how we made them feel. So really think about, how are you showing up? What are your intentions going into this interaction or conversation about collaboration? Are you truly here to collaborate, or are you here to do something else? So really get intentional, get clear about your intentions and motivations would be my final thought. And then in terms of contact information, I can be found at Sylvia, so SILVIA at braincells.org. That's BRAINSELLS.
I love that name.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here, Sylvia.
Thanks for having me.
Great. Unitzia, how about you? What are your closing thoughts, and what's your contact info?
Absolutely. So for closing thoughts, when I think about collaboration, my parting thought would be, as you're evaluating, for those of you listening, as you're evaluating, how should you go about collaborations? A lot of individuals I see get very much diluted. The relationships are diluted because they're going after too much. They're going to networking meetings and it's all about getting the number of business cards. Be intentional. What is it that you're looking for? Are you looking for someone that you can maybe partner with on delivering value to your clients, right? The cross collaborations we just talked about, the cross referral partnerships. And if it's someone you're wanting to build a camaraderie, maybe you're wanting to do a joint event, that's going to be very different. And if you're focused on what is it that you're trying to achieve, is going to make those collaborations and those relationships that much more meaningful. And very importantly, it's going to make it doable to sustain and maintain those conversations, because otherwise we only have 24 hours in the day. I wish we had more, right? As far as where folks can find us, very easy, www.podcast.excelstra.com. That's podcast.excelstra.com. And there at the bottom of the page, you will find a variety of different resources, including ways to get in touch with me or someone on our team, but just different ways to kind of understand better what it is that we do and how we help clients. And if we can ever be of help, it's easy to get in touch with us.
Beautiful.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for saying yes to this today. It's so nice to be with you again.
Likewise.
All right.
And Mary, your final thoughts and contact info?
So my final thoughts really come to one of the things, Regina, actually that came up for me when you invited me to this was the barriers that I perceive to collaboration. And the biggest barrier was myself, as I think back on my experience and that idea that, well, I don't really have that much to offer anyone else, so I'm going to stay in my lane and just kind of do what I do. The way that I found to work out of that, and these two ladies are perfect examples of that, is just start having conversations with people and be curious about what is it that they do? How does that align with what I'm doing? And asking them about their clients. What are the challenges that their clients are experiencing, so that you have a better idea of what this whole big marketplace is really all about.
Good point.
So be willing just to get curious and ask questions with no expectations. I spoke with both of these ladies. I had no expectations for that call other than I wanted to make a connection and let's see what happens from that. So for anyone who says, oh gosh, I don't have that much to offer, just start having conversations and you will find those opportunities. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
True.
And my contact info, my website is plenavita.coach. That's PLENAVITA.coach, means full life in Latin. And there's a contact page on there that you can reach me, and my email is also on there as well. So thank you again, Regina. This has been so much fun on a Friday.
Awesome. It has been my pleasure for certain. This is one of the highlights of my week is when I get to do these, because I get to meet amazing people and, not only add value to our audiences, but I increase my own knowledge as I listen to you. And so it's wonderful. It's one of those energy creating things for me, for sure. So thank you for being here, ladies. Thank you, Mary, again, for inviting these wonderful guests. This has been wonderful to get to know you. And folks, we appreciate you tuning in whenever you're watching this and wherever you're watching it. We hope you'll come back and watch it again and meet more amazing people as we move forward. So thanks again, and we'll see you all next time on Collaboration Conversations. Bye for now.